Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey here in the Great White North in Canada. We are slated to have a massive winter storm here with a whole ton of ice, and I mean inches of ice, because why not? And of course we have the LA boys here that are sitting there in, at least one of them in a jacket. Which it is what it is. But anyways, and I'm in a t-shirt. But anyways, we will go from there. This is gonna be a great show. We're gonna have a bit of a roundtable discussion. Really wanting a lot of the feedback here from those of you who are joined us live in the chat. We're gonna give you kind of an update on where our team's at, some things that we kind of still think we're all collectively lacking. Perhaps some additional insight from those draft prospects that we might be interested in or not interested in. And I just think that maybe some foreshadowing as to our current mental mindsets in terms of where we would like our team to go in the first round of the NFL draft as a bit of a projection. I think might be a good way to round out the show to get all of your input in here. Alex does wish he could be here with everyone here, but he's got an absolute just truckload of stuff going on right now, and he will do his best to be here next week. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to spin this right off. Quick introductions for those of you who have not been here before, and if you are new to the show, welcome. There's a big subscribe button that you can go ahead and click and turn on those notifications to be notified when our show goes live every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. I will leave the other time zone conversions up to you. Figure that one out for yourself.
Never understood Central. I'm always like Pacific or Eastern. That's
yeah. Well, actually, it's really interesting because the Pacific and Eastern actually make up the vast majority of the populations in pretty much both of our countries.
Yep.
When you actually look at where the actual bulk of the populace is, both in Canada here, the Eastern time zone is one that kind of makes up the bulk of the population. Arguably, the same holds true in the U.S. actually as well. That whole Eastern, block there in the U.S. is just an enormous population, and then it kind of skips the entire middle part of both of our countries, and it's like there's a bunch of people there, but not that many really relative to the other time zone. And then you get to the Pacific, and then there's a whole whack of people in both of our countries again, where you then get the major city centers. So as much as everyone likes to think Canada and the US are different, it's actually super interesting when you even look at where the population centers are in the time zones. Even they mirror, in a complete horizontal line up and down almost for the most part. It's pretty fascinating. But anywho, over this way, we have DZ, who is going to represent his Los Angeles Chargers and give us all of the information there. Obviously, we got a bunch of Raiders guys, a bunch of Broncos guys, and a few Chargers guys here in the chat as well. So for all the other teams, this is why you join the show. You get a whole bunch of information on the other teams, so you have a bit of an idea when you start having those divisional matchups and what to look out for. Down directly below, Raiders fans, you love them, you know them. This is Mr. Jack Kenna. Jack, thank you for repping your Las Vegas Raiders and giving us that information. It's going to be a super interesting show today, guys. I'm going to start off with DZ, who wasn't able to join us last week. Let's kick it off with a bit of Chargers news. Who you got? Who are you looking at, and what do you think you're missing?
Ooh, well, this free agency has kind of tested all fans' patience, especially Chargers fans, because we're new to the whole Baltimore Raven way of philosophy of acquiring guys. But if we did pay attention, which we didn't, they told us what they were going to do from the start. They wanted to bring back their guys that they brought in, and they did that for the most part. We did lose two guys, one to Alex's Chiefs, Christian Fulton, and we lost Poona Ford to the Rams. And Poona, that one stung because he provided that juice in the inside. Dude really balled out last season for us. We had about 26 free agents, a lot, heading into this season. And to be honest, a lot of them were old regime guys, and let's call it what they were. They were kind of dead weight. But there were a lot of guys they needed to bring back as well. So there's 26, and as I last checked, they have brought back 21 guys. Yes, Captain. But we brought back about 21 guys. And let's see where to start. I mean, I could just ramble off the names, but I would say the one that kind of got the fan base as a whole to be like, oh, thank God, was when they signed Mekhi Becton from the Philadelphia Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
They brought him over. He's projected to be our right guard to pair up with Joe Alt. That is going to be some beef on that right side. It's going to be a sight to see. You know, there is some stuff with Mekhi that it's kind of like a little bit of a yellow flag. It's his knees, and his pass blocking isn't the best. But when Jim came over the Chargers, they wanted this to be a run-first team, and that didn't work out from the start. This was his lowest ranking as a head coach in the history of his career with a run success rate. And he wants to get that back, up into the, above average, and bringing Mekhi was a great step because Mekhi is a really good run blocking guard. He played really good as guard last season for the Super Bowl champs. I mean, granted, he's
just a small guy, he's just a small dude,
right.
no biggie,
I think he's listed at anywhere from 6'7" to 6'8", 360 pounds. And then he'll be hanging out next to Joe Alt, who's 6'8" as well at 322 pounds. It's oh my goodness. A lot of beef. Yeah, and another guy that they brought in earlier, and it's well known, was Najee Harris, the running back from Pittsburgh. And at first I was like, okay, it's just a signing, because Najee, he's only got a 3.9 clip average in his whole career. He doesn't do anything sexy. He's just a blue-collar, lunch pail kind of running back. But then I looked into it, and then he had some kind of these comments about how Pittsburgh was. He kind of hinted that Pittsburgh didn't have an identity on offense. And he felt like he wasn't used in the best way that he thought he could be used. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what Greg Roman can do with him. I'm kind of excited now. I'm kind of intrigued to see if Najee has more to offer.
And by the way, I agree.
No, I do too. He never gets hurt either.
Well, so there's a few things with Najee Harris, and this is where I got into with a whole bunch of Broncos guys, and it's well documented on what is now X and on all the YouTube comments and stuff like that. And I'm willing to stand by all of those, and if I'm wrong, I'm also willing to admit if I got it wrong. But so here's my take on Najee. One, he's a tall, big dude. So the benefit you actually have with a guy like Najee Harris is that he's got a very unique size speed dynamic.
6'1", 240.
6'1", 240. That's a great like middle.
As of last season, he was the third biggest back behind Henry and AJ Dillon.
Right, but
I didn't realize he was that big.
He is, and that's why I wanted him, actually. One of the reasons why I was outlining on the show, was it three weeks ago now, that I wanted him on the Broncos, is I thought he was going to be a great veteran pickup for my Denver Broncos, because he can pass catch, he can run block, and he can run. And I also thought that he was actually improperly used in the red zone, where I thought that he could actually capitalize better there, and he just wasn't used appropriately. The other thing that Pittsburgh did not have when he was there, if we're going to be perfectly honest and just be real, is they didn't really have what their old school offensive line was traditionally in Pittsburgh. They were not that. I think they used to, was it the Iron Curtain? I know I gotta ask my Steelers dude.
It's a steel curtain. That was their defense.
Yes. No, but they had a nickname for their offensive line as well, and I just can't remember what it was.
Are you talking about like the Roethlisberger era?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll ask my man Stryker over there with Steeler Nation. In terms of that's his channel. Stryker's a diehard Steelers fan, a great dude, great guy to follow if you want to actually find some insight on the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they have traditionally actually been very competitive on the offensive line front within that division, keeping their quarterbacks upright, running the ball well, pass protection, that sort of thing. And they've kind of fallen off a little bit as of late, where they've kind of they've leaned into the the pass game rather, as opposed to the run game, and haven't really done as well as they've typically done in the run game. And I think that's what Najee's actually kind of hinting at, which is, all right, I'm 6'1", 240. All right, that's cool. I'm not gonna get skinny like a dude that's 5'10". Like I'm too tall. Like I'm too tall to get that low and too thick to shrink that much. I can't, like, I'm looking at myself, right? So he's 6'1" and 240. So I'm an inch taller and I'm about 10 pounds heavier now, like where I'm sitting at right now, like to Najee Harris. Like I'm doing a direct comparison. I try fitting through some of those holes you see on screen. Like you can't, like I physically wouldn't be able to bend my shoulders like that or turn like this and run at full clip. He's just a bigger framed guy. Like he just is. And I think that's what he's referring to. I think he's just simply saying, like, where is the Joe Alt on the right-hand side of the offensive line? Where is the Mekhi Becton as a guard in the offensive line? Like we are in the AFC North. Like where are these dudes?
There's a reason for that, and that has to do with Mike Tomlin. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they haven't had a losing season under Mike Tomlin, so every time they go to draft, they're missing out on those top-tier O-linemen or weapons or whoever. But and I think this season is going to test a lot of the diehard Steeler fan base, because I think they're kind of getting tired of just coming in at that 9-10 win, not really doing much more afterwards. So we'll see if they start calling for Tomlin's seat, which would be crazy because I think Tomlin's one of the best head coaches in the league. But facts are facts. I think it's kind of getting old there. They need to put up or shut up.
Yeah, but do you know what the thing with Tomlin though? I wonder if Tomlin is becoming a John Fox. So I'm tying it back.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, I'm tying it back to the division here, right? He was a Denver Broncos head coach.
Yeah.
He got us kind of to the place, if you will. He did a lot of great things. I am not knocking the guy. That the dude was a talented and gifted head coach.
Yeah.
You cannot take that away from him. However, he kind of got to a point where he got you kind of there, but couldn't get you all the way.
Yeah.
And yes, Tomlin was able to get you all the way. And actually, unlike, I would argue, a guy like Bill Belichick, Tomlin has shown that he is actually the reason.
I mean, there's probably 25 teams that would fire their coaches today to get Tomlin.
Oh, so, I don't disagree with that, but I think what the problem that Tomlin has in this, I don't want to keep stealing your thunder here, but I think this is a really interesting conversation, which is Tomlin has a record right now of never having a losing season.
It's insane. Impressive.
I mean,
absolutely.
That should get him into the Hall of Fame, if but for nothing else, right? Like for sure, right? However, this is what the problem is that at some point you need to kind of bite the bullet as a team. At some point you kind of need to just say, good is not good enough, and we need to kind of sell the mediocrity away. Like get rid of the mediocrity that is getting us that, like, I am such a good coach that I can coach average dudes and make them above average. That's awesome. Like that's fantastic, right? But what you really need to do at this stage in the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of story arc, I think, which is important, is you need to basically bomb, or at least not have a great season, because you need to retool at some very key positions, as we've discussed on the show, that only exist within the top 10 in the first round.
I think
that only exist in that top end of the second round.
Soon.
Yeah, so I think this is the year they're going to try to go for it, Jack. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be there.
There you go. That's what I was going to bring up, Aaron Rodgers.
I got a feeling that that's where he's going to be. He's going to be a Steeler. And then bringing over DK Metcalf, outbidding my team for him, because I know the Chargers, they were looking at DK last year, talking to Seattle, like, hey, they're poking him, and they weren't willing. And then this season, DK pretty much said he wants to play in LA, but the Steelers had a better offer, so he went there. And hats off to him. I wish him nothing but luck. But Pittsburgh is looking like they want to try to make a run this season, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see.
And I think that's going to happen. I think, with Aaron Rodgers, and I can see them possibly trading up in the first and grabbing like a Jackson Dart.
Sure.
And let him sit for a year.
Yeah. We'll see if Aaron wants to be a teacher. He's kind of expressing he doesn't really want to kind of do that mentorship stuff. He's kind of got that. I don't know. Aaron's kind of been rubbing me the wrong way as of late. But I don't know. Whatever. That's a different.
Do you know what the problem with Rodgers is? No, but I can appreciate where he's coming from.
Sure. I mean,
and this is why he's actually still physically very like he hasn't really fallen off physically in truth. Like if you actually watch him on the field, he's being cautious because he knows that a 24-year-old that's coming down that's 350 pounds is going to absolutely just destroy him.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to be, mindful and thoughtful of that, right? But at the same time, when you actually watch him when he needs to do the thing, he's got all of the speed that he used to have really in Green Bay, to be quite honest. And he's still got a great arm when he needs to actually leverage and use it, when he has the time to think or throw or do the thing. And so I actually think that that Aaron Rodgers' mindset is, you need to give me the time in order to get the ball out of my hands.
This will be interesting, Richie, though, because where he's been, his last stops, he's had his guys, right? Now, if he goes to Pittsburgh, DK and I keep forgetting the other knucklehead's name, they're not his guys, so he's going to have to build a relationship with them and some sort of chemistry, and we'll see if that works out. Because, when he went to the Jets, he's like, hey, I need my guys. I need Devontae. I need Lazard or whoever to come over, and he's not going to have those guys in Pittsburgh, and I don't think Tomlin's going to play those games either with him. So he's going to be like, hey, we've got two really good guys here for you, so make it work.
He will. You also got to look at his history. I think the reason why he wanted his guys is because he also recognized that the team was not doing enough on the offensive line in order to keep him upright. So he was like, okay,
the Jets, right?
Yeah. If you're not gonna bolster the offensive line to allow me to not get absolutely slaughtered, then I need to then get guys that I have cheat codes with effectively to try and get the ball out of my hands, because you're not willing to go pay $12 million for a guard or a center or a whatever.
Sure.
And I think that's a problem. Like you look at what you guys did with Becton as an example, right? Well, Becton would actually have made a great Steeler, right? Like he's got the size, the mass for that kind of like gritty style of football. He came from Philly, which is kind of a cooler climate as well, which kind of jives a little bit with what they're probably trying to do. And
I'm surprised, Richie, like how they landed Becton. I mean, it wasn't a huge deal. It's only a 2-year deal. It wasn't really expensive. And I'm just I'm curious because none of the fans, this was silent. He was like at the facility, like at night or something, and just showed up. It was really Chargers very tight-lipped when it comes to the guys they bring in. Sorry, I kind of went over you there for a second.
No, I was going to say one last thing on the one last thing I wanted to say about Aaron Rodgers. The guys talk about not being a teacher and so forth. You got to remember that's how he was brought up in the NFL too, with Brett Favre. He was treated that way, so he probably feels, hey, this is the way I grew up in the league. I'm doing the same thing. I'm worried about myself, worried about keeping my job. You know, these kids that are coming out, they're coming out to take my job.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see what happens with the Steelers. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to wish them success because one of our teams is probably going to have to see them, and they beat our butts pretty good last season. Their homecoming game. I'm going to go over
and
go
super
ahead.
quick on that. You're absolutely correct, Jack. That is how Aaron Rodgers was brought into the league. And the other thing that Aaron Rodgers has, I kind of see him as a little bit of like a bit of an Elway in some
prima
regard.
Donna?
Well, he's not so much. Well, a prima donna, I suppose you could look at it from that perspective. But
I didn't say that.
I did.
I suppose you could look at it from that perspective. But where I'm really going with it is that when you have a guy that's got an arm that is at an elite caliber without really trying, like just because he can, like he was just born that way. And sure, these quarterbacks all have elite level arms, but Rodgers, amongst even that group, is in the upper echelon of that group. And I don't think that's really arguable when you've seen him in the NFL. Some of the throws he's made when he was in Green Bay are, they're permanent highlight reel worthy in terms of the stuff he was able to do, right? Like, I think we can generally agree on that at least. And I think one of the challenges you have with folks like Rodgers and people like Elway and, Dan Marino seemed to be a little bit like that as well, as much as I know people like to treat him as a football darling, but I think he was very similar in that regard as well, which is they have so much God-given talent in terms of their arm strength, their accuracy, and what they're able to do, that they have a difficult time understanding that other people aren't like them. Right? It's like, what do you mean? Just do this. And it's like they're skipping 20 steps in the middle because the steps in the middle just came naturally to them. Whereas other players in the NFL actually needed to try. Right? They actually needed to figure it out. They actually needed to work on the arm mechanics in order to spin the ball just a certain way to allow like the wind when it's blowing from left to right to carry the ball, to drop it onto the sideline. For some reason, you have like John Elway, Dan Marino, Aaron Rodgers, I will argue, is in that group as well. And you hear guys like Shannon Sharp and these other dudes that are like pass catchers, like elite level Hall of Fame pass catchers at the NFL level. Like, Aaron Rodgers literally throws the nicest football I've ever seen. And they publicly said it. Like literally, you watch him throw a football and you're like, that is like literally postcard perfect. Like, it's just got that like beautiful arc to it. And it's just a pretty
right football. Amount of touch on it.
Yeah, it's just a pretty football, right? And so,
I mean, that's my knock on is on Justin Herbert is I don't want to say has trouble with it, but it could have to do with the O-line. Is he puts too much touch on the football? Sometimes he throws way too many piss missiles at these guys, and they're going right through their hands. But that's
exactly what I'm getting at, right? That's exactly what I'm getting to. Is that when you get that really well thrown ball and you can just do it naturally, I think you kind of just get comfortable with it. I think you just kind of say, well, this is the way it always is. This is the way I can always do it. And then being able to pass that knowledge on to people like beneath him, like that are coming up below, it almost becomes frustrating because he's just like, what do you mean? And when I was your age, I just did this. Come on, do it.
Even if he doesn't want to teach, if they do decide to bring in, like Jack was talking about, even if they do bring in a guy, I mean, that guy just watching Aaron would learn a whole lot. I mean, would learn incredible amount of stuff from a guy like Rodgers. Even though, like, right now I'm just annoyed with that he hasn't picked a spot yet, man. It's like, that's just me. I'm just annoyed by hearing it in the news. Where's Aaron going to go? And it's just getting old. Just pick a damn team, dude, and just get it over with.
But he also could be sitting around waiting for guys like Geno Smith to sign a contract, like Brock Purdy to sign a contract to elevate his stock to get more dollars out of it. So he could be playing that route, going, "Hey, what are you going to
There's
have
only a
left? What's going to
few.
be out there?"
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing what Brock wants is ridiculous, but that's something else.
So now that we kind of covered Becton and stuff, let's.
Well, there's like two more guys I want to talk about real quick.
Yeah, just we'll go continue on with the Charger stuff.
All right, cool.
Another guy they brought back Mike Williams, which surprised me, but also we kind of talked about it, I think it was like a couple weeks ago, right? And kind of happy about it because that's another guy that Justin has chemistry with, and he was healthy for 18 games, which is like, oh my
That's
God.
unreal.
But he did say that he wasn't used. It was statistically his worst year. He didn't have a good rapport with Aaron. So there's that. I'm glad he's back. I hope they add to that room. We'll talk about that later. And another guy I was actually surprisingly excited about was Jack's boy, Andre James, they brought over, who was their starting center, who played really well until he got hurt. And I think he played well under your guys' last coordinator. Was that Getsy, or was Getsy last year?
Getsy was last year for part of it. Then he became Gonzo.
Yeah, okay. So
and then we had your Norv Turner and son incorporation as the coordinator, but by that time he was already out, and JPJ came over.
The reason I like this is because Andre James has shown that he could be a decent center in the NFL. You know, he could play decently. He can be not a matador like Bradley Bozeman was for us in pass blocking last year, because that wasn't his strong suit. So what this does is they're going to have what I see right now, a three-way competition for center next year. And I love that competition. Let's bring it on. Just like Jim Harbaugh says, competitors welcome. So it's going to be Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, and Andre James competing to see who's going to be that starting center. And right now, I hope Andre James gets it. He'll be paired up with, really good right side. And we'll see how the left side works out, because I got a sneaking suspicion that they're going to still draft more O-linemen. So Harbaugh loves these guys.
What you're getting, DZ and Andre James, he's a smart player. He's just not a big player. So, which I think Beckham is going to help him a lot. When you watch, Andre James go against Chris Jones, and then of course for the Raiders they have Parham, who's also another guy who's like 290. These guys aren't even cracking 300. You get two of those guys, you can see Chris Jones pushing them back. So Beckham, being on your team is going to be a huge boost. So you can get pause on, like a Chris Jones type player and not getting pushed back.
You just said something, Jack, that I wish Alex was on the show with us this week, because Mekhi Becton took Chris Jones out of that Super Bowl, if you don't remember. So I'm kind of feel a little good about that we have a guy who could possibly handle Chris Jones, but we do know how the Chiefs, they do like to move their guys around, so if they're smart, they're going to put them over on our left guard side, which right now is a mystery. But look, if they could figure out this left guard center stuff, that'd be great, because as of right now, there's 4 first-round picks on this offensive line. And I just pray to the football gods that this works out, because this is what they want. They want to run this damn ball, and then they don't want to have to rely on Justin and these pass catchers, which you're still going to have to do in the NFL. So I hope that they bring in more weapons for him, most definitely. But
I will say you probably have the best offensive line probably going into this year.
Over here, well,
I know they played awesome, but with all developing and backing them there, and you got an all-pro, left tackle.
So
you're going to compete.
So Jack, unpopular opinion in Broncos country, and I might lose all of the folks on MHRT network as I say this aloud, so I'm gonna get it out quick and maybe they miss it and give me some feedback. I believe the Broncos offensive line was largely a product of Sean Payton's offensive scheme.
Yes,
he likes to get the ball out quick. And
yes, Paul Schaefer, they do.
Yeah, and
last season,
Paul,
yes.
Paul, for last season, the Broncos, believe it or not, actually had the number 3. They were ranked number 3 in
they
the
were
entire
they were the number. They could have been the number 1, but the Eagles overtook them late in the season.
Yeah, and really, what took the Broncos back actually was the fact that they decided to revert back to a Rob Schneider quote and decided to pull it out of their back pocket when they tried to run the ball, and they just sucked again. We suck again. That was that was come on, that was good.
That was good.
But that was really the Broncos' issue, right? Is that the Broncos' offensive line and or running backs as a combo. And if Zach Seegers ever sees this, I know that he and I have kind of volleyed back and forth. His take is that the running backs were the problem because the run block rate, apparently, according to Pro Football Focus, which I don't put that much stock in.
No, you can't put everything in it.
Yeah.
Especially with offensive linemen on PFF.
Yeah. So I kind of hold that with more like a ton of salt as opposed to a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, like, I believe that when I see it. Whereas I actually think what the Broncos really need is a center and another guard to bolster the offensive line. And frankly, I also think that the another big issue for us is I'll say the tackles who are above average in the NFL, but they're not at a point where they're going to be moving guys big time off the ball, kind of like what you have with some of the other teams. I actually think that where you see the best evidence of that is the Broncos pass rush actually typically did very well against a lot of teams in the NFL last season.
Yeah.
But we generally struggled against the Chargers, for example, with Alt when he was in the game. And then when Alt left the game against the Broncos, which he did, by the way, we did better. And that kind of goes to show that big, tall, strong guys that are on the line, like the Eagles, like the Chargers have, can actually mitigate and properly address great pass rushers just because they have both the length and the size to keep them at bay.
It was kind of a funny stat between Slater and Alt. Alt gave up less pressures than Slater this last season, but more sacks. It was kind of a weird trade-off between the two. Alt did get beat because they'd put some savvy dudes on him, and he's a rook, and some guys, some speed dudes just, that he's a monster. So some of these speed guys kind of ate his lunch. Unlike Slater, who's really good with speed rushers, he likes to be on that island. We'll see if Alt can kind of up his game.
It is so promising with Alt. I mean, I've said this many times on the show. As a Notre Dame fan, watching him play, coming over your Chargers, and then watching him go against Max Crosby. I think they had 11 combat, went against each other, 0 sacks, 0 pressures.
He's special, man. And I know that. So it's funny. You're a Raiders fan and a Notre Dame guy. So you were sick that he came to Chargers. And then Joe Alt's father played for the Chiefs. So I bet his father's kind of like,
oh, geez.
Oh, damn it. Now he's going to be a Charger. So there's got to be like a cousin or somebody in there that's a Broncos fan that's like, damn it. So it's funny how this kind of all works.
Just for good measure, right?
Yeah.
Because since we're talking Alt and Beckman, I just want you to think of this, okay? So you got 350 pounds in Beckman, 320 pounds in Alt. That's 670 pounds. Then you got a 240-pound running back. That's 900 pounds, 910 pounds between 3 guys. Good luck in trying to stop that.
And I see a lot of 12, 13 personnel in the future. I see some really just giant O-line, probably for 4 yards. Who cares? But they're just going to throw some dudes at you out there. It's going to be fun. We'll see. We'll see how it works.
You're wrong on that. I actually think what the plan is going to be is you're going to get 4 yards to start. Right? But
That's
when you
best
start,
case scenario, Rich.
But when you start no, but that's the thing. When you have that much weight pushing against other humans, the only teams that are going to be able to compete with that are teams like the Eagles, who have the equal counter punch.
I'm a scarred Chargers fan, Richie. I've been scarred for decades, and I'm excited right now with Becton. I'm just like, let's just wrap this dude in bubble wrap and let's get him out there for the first game in Brazil.
I feel like a traitor having to be the one to say this, to talk you off the ledge, given the fact that I'm wearing my United in Orange, United in Orange, shirt here from the
I'm
Broncos
wearing old Chargers and Michigan colors.
So this is literally the largest size that they have at the stadium, and it's freaking painted on me, basically. In terms of what you guys have, I think Chargers fans have largely missed the point, which is the fact that by all rights, you guys should never have done as well as you did last season with so much change on your team. And that's where I'm going with it, just so that you and I are on the same page in terms of kind of where I'm taking this comment and discussion. Your coach said, no. The prevailing winds within, all of the draft idiots and all that kind of stuff is that I should go get a wide receiver for Justin Herbert because, flashy is better and all that other kind of nonsense. And he goes, no. Hold my beer, shut up, sit down, and let's, let me teach you the game of football. And your head coach said, I'm going to go get a monster on the right-hand side of my offensive line who is a critical cog into making my offense work, because this is about changing culture and tone. He then went out in the offseason and targeted the largest guard to stand beside that guy and say, we're done. And now you went out and got one of the largest and frankly healthiest running backs in the NFL, bar none, actually, when you combine the two. The only one that might actually beat him out, and it's an unfair comparison, so I even feel bad bringing it up, is like the unicorn in Derrick Henry.
Okay.
Like Derrick Henry is just kind of like this
special,
freak of nature. He's just a freak of nature, right?
So he's a defensive end playing running back.
Unicorn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's like 6'4" and like 280 or something stupid, and the dude never gets hurt really for that, and it's unbelievable.
Paul Schaefer, Dobbins, I gonna be really upset because the paintings on the wall that he's not coming back. And I've heard that he's linked to actually Richie's Broncos and a couple other teams. And that's going to suck because he's a really good guy. And I think the sky's the limit for him, especially when he's healthy. The dude's he's a great running back, and he'll be missed. But
I don't mind Dobbins. I don't think that he's the right fit for my Denver Broncos, generally speaking, just in terms of how Peyton likes to run his offense. Is it going to be the worst news? No. However, you are correct. Dobbins has been on multiple different sources been tied to the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
Which is, one or
it's
two.
It's gonna suck seeing him in orange and blue. Jesus
One or two sources. One or two sources you can chalk up to kind of hearsay. When you start getting into like 10, 12, 13, you kind of start getting into, someone must actually know something.
Kind of going along that lines with health and stuff, the Chargers did miss out on Evan Ingram, who did go to the Broncos, but they did sign Tyler Conklin. And the thing about him, he's not sexy. He's not a sexy tight end. But there's two things about this guy. He doesn't miss games, and he doesn't drop balls. As coach would say, pause. And there's a theme going on. Not always, because Mekhi Becton does have his flags, like we talked earlier, with his health, his knees. But there's a theme with this Ortiz and Harbaugh. He did miss 4 games last season, but the games that they missed, they put him on IR just because they thought Gus Edwards and Kamani and Haskins would be able to take the load, but they didn't. They couldn't replicate anything Dobbins was doing. That's how good he was. That interior of the O-line for the Chargers last year was subpar, was just trash. But Dobbins made it work. So that's why I know like a lot of people are like, oh, Dobbins he's not. No, he will do good. And if you put him behind a really good O-line, like the Broncos, I expect great things. But yes, I
kind of thought, Dobbins has the capability to go outside where your other running backs are more interior where your weakest spot was. So
100, yes. The Gus Bus was not the Gus Bus last season. So he's a free agent right now, and we'll see who picks him up. But the Tyler Conklin signing, I'm okay with it. I like it because everything they've done so far is put them into this draft. They're not pigeonholed at any spot. They can really go best player available at 22, whether that be an edge guy, a weapon of some sort. I will say this team is lacking speed juice on the defensive side. They need some pass rush juice big time because that's not Mac's game. That's not Tui's game. We did lose some juice on the interior with Puna. They did bring in some kind of like lower level D guys, Deshaun Hand and Naquan Jones. Deshaun Hand, he's bounced around a little bit, but these like Baltimore kind of philosophy, they find anybody. Conklin solid, yes. No, he is very solid. And
so I was going to ask that: is he more of a pass blocking tight end, or is he a running block tight end, or is he 50-50?
Well, so you got to remember we have Will Dissly, who is probably one of the best blocking tight ends that they turned into a weapon last season, even though that's not his game. And it showed in the playoffs, and it bit bit us in the butt. But Conklin he'll be good for like 500 yards, 6 tutties or something like that, maybe more. We'll see if he's gonna elevate his game. Justin will elevate his game. This is probably gonna be his best quarterback, and I'm even saying that with Aaron Rodgers because
Conklin can pass catch, he can block. He can do a few different things.
He's well-rounded.
Yeah, he can do a few different things. He's the type of guy that I actually thought that Sean Payton might go after just because you look at the type of dudes that Sean Payton likes to have on his team. And frankly, Harbaugh and Payton are not so far different from one another in terms of how they kind of
just offensive philosophy, I feel like.
Yeah.
Payton's more exotic.
Yeah, but generally speaking, when you look at certain positions and stuff, Sean Payton thinks that he can kind of do anything with different guys, whereas Harbaugh is kind of a bit of a more old school style, and it kind of works for him because he's got a very clear vision in terms of how he likes to run things.
He did not like last season.
Yeah, I think Harbaugh and Pete Carroll are very similar. They want to pound the rock right. I think your head coach, Richie, is a little bit more all over. He can definitely do more stuff with the passing game.
The 3 most winningest coaches, I believe Peyton and Pete are at 170 something plus wins. And then obviously Reed's way up. Jim's not in there because he hasn't been in the league that long. But I mean, you have some of the most winningest coaches in this division right now. It's pretty insane, like to see what's going on with the AFC West. And
but Harbaugh has my mindset, and that's kind of why I'm a bit concerned.
Definitely.
Harbaugh plays like football the way I want football played, which is concerning to me because I actually think that his issue is just time. He needs enough time to get the right guys in the right places. And I think that his philosophy is going to prove through the test of time, which it has done so far, because he's done quite well for himself in the few number of years he's actually been in the NFL relative to the rest of the coaches. And I just think he just needs enough time to build out some of the remaining pieces on that roster. And then I think it's going to be very dangerous. And the reason why Conklin, I think, was a great pickup for Harbaugh and dangerous that he's within our division playing for Harbaugh as well, is because he is well-rounded. So when Conklin's on the field, he could pass catch or run block. So there is no tell on the field in terms of what type of play are we running. So the Chargers can line Conklin up in the exact same look, run the ball one play and pass the ball the next in the same look.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas Ingram, as an example, and this was my one knock on Ingram for the Broncos, just to, juxtapose the two.
You're not expecting him to be a blocker.
Dude, the dude couldn't block himself out of a wet paper bag.
He's a lead pass catcher, but yes, you're right.
Yeah, and so
and
that's
they're
what I'm
not
saying.
going to use him that way. So
no, I know, but no, my only saving grace with Ingram, and this is where I was originally
coming into a way better situation, Richie.
He is, and I've also seen Sean Payton leverage a guy who was very similar to Ingram by the name of Jimmy Graham. And do very well with him in a system that he likes to run and that sort of thing, in that quote unquote joker role where he could kind of run him all over the field and get all those mismatches and stuff. So I have some saving grace, I suppose, in bringing in Ingram in. But my main concern, and I think it's a completely valid concern, is that Evan Ingram is kind of a one-trick pony. He can run and catch the ball. He's very good at it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not. I'm simply saying, though, is that when you see him in or on the field, he's effectively filling in the role to be a better version of Lil Jordan Humphrey.
I could see him being Bo Nix's safety blanket.
Mm-hmm.
I know a safety blanket would have to line up on the line and kind of be that pass, go out for a catch. And we'll see if Peyton, we'll see if they say, hey, look, dude, like, you're going to have to figure this shit out, and you're going to have to put your hands on people. We'll see if Peyton can get him to do that in this game.
To see like what Ingram's like, the percentage of plays that straight pass versus, blocking. Yeah. And I'm going to guess it's probably like in the 70 percentile, going out for passes.
At least. But I just think that Paul was completely on point there, which is Conklin is a well-rounded tight end who is, my guy Saubert would be a dude that I would kind of.
Saubert's a free agent.
Yeah, but I'm just saying is that when you have a guy that can pass catch, that can run block, and that can kind of play special teams and kind of do all the different stuff, I think when you have a guy that kind of ticks those boxes, he is a much better value for the team simply because you're not tipping your hand when he's on the field. And I think that's a Harbaugh thing. Harbaugh's big thing is literally he and I mirror seemingly each other's football philosophies in many ways, which is I want big people movers on the offensive line. I want to get big, aggressive defensive linemen. And yes, you may not know them, but I will make you know them because I will coach them up to kind of be a certain way. And then you just play that really gritty style of football, which then takes you from a 5-win team to like a 10-win team in 1 year because you've immediately changed the culture from being soft to hard-nosed literally overnight.
Per ESPN last season, they had the Chargers at 8 wins. They just came out again, and I don't like this, but they have the Chargers.
Came out the over/under.
They have the Chargers at the 5th highest wins in they like in the league or something, and I'm like, I don't like those numbers being thrown out like that because I kind of jumped the gun a little bit last season. I said, 25 will be able to contend, and as I look at the roster now, and Richie, you obviously seem to have a lot of faith in Harbaugh, and I like that. I still feel like we're many players away from contention. But look, we got 10 picks in this draft. And from listening to some of the writers who know more, who dig into these teams a lot deeper than I do, or maybe some of you guys do, the Raven way, I guess, is you supplement your roster, win free agency, and you draft the guys you think that can get you to the Super Bowl. And I kind of was like taken back by that a little bit. I was like, I always thought that was the opposite, but I guess this is the way they want to do it. So I'm like, okay, we'll see. Like,
well, DZ, not to be cruel, because that's not necessarily who I am, but that's exactly why the Chargers landed where they have been these past years, which is you had a home run hit often in the first round, and then you literally sucked every pick thereafter. And then
you're right.
And then you got one or two UDFAs that kind of overperformed, like your what the heck's that dude's name?
Antonio Gates?
No, Philip Lindsay clone.
Austin Eckler.
Eckler. Sorry, yeah. Eckler. And you know, he got a couple dudes like that was, you know, one could say it was skill, one could say it was luck, but let's just kind of split the difference and say that it was.
I mean, it's both. You need luck to get your opportunities.
Right. So, but nonetheless, the problem is that the best teams, and I mean like truly the best teams, like the Philadelphia Eagles with their Kansas City Chiefs, etc. What they do is they do a true assessment of their roster, and they draft depth for development, and then they end up coaching those guys up to be serviceable or well above serviceable starters, where they're able to move off of some guys, keep other guys, and then draft replacements so that their roster just keeps progressing forward. And it's
not fun for Fairweather fans, I'll tell you that.
No, it's not, because you don't get the flash. No. This is the problem.
No.
You get rid of the flash, but you get competitive teams.
And I'm not a Fairweather fan, but I got caught into it this offseason, and I'll admit it. I was like, what the hell's going on? Why are we missing out on these big names? Why are we not getting Devontae Adams or DK Metcalf? You know, there were some of these guards that we didn't get, and I'm like, what is going on? We have all this money, and I got caught up in the BS, especially on X, and I had to like come down off that Fairweather, pissed off, Telesco, kind of old school Charger mentality and go, oh, this is a whole new ball game. This is a whole new philosophy.
Here, Paul, you're over on MHRT Network. I can tell, I believe you are in fact a Broncos fan. And
that's what it looks like.
And so let's at least address. Let's address. It has
nothing to do with Spanos, Paul.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. So, Paul,
sure.
I'm looking for your feedback on this. We had Elway for a bunch of years, and Elway's best years were when Pat Bowlen was still involved with the team. And as soon as Pat Bowlen stepped away from the team, Elway just spiraled. He went absolutely just insane. And Elway's best years were that first block.
Batman's Robin got taken away.
Correct. Well, no. Yeah. Actually, it was it was Batman got taken away, and then Robin was left in charge.
Took over. Yeah.
And then Robin was like, I need to try to make up for the fact that I'm not as strong as Batman. And then you ended up with a bunch of, you know, Flash and whiz bang. Oh, good Lord. And so let's just put it this way. There's a difference between Elway as a GM, and there's a difference between Elway as a player. Elway as a player is upper echelon, and it's basically undeniable based on the play.
He's a god amongst the Bronco fan base.
Yeah.
And, he is the god of Broncos.
However, where you completely can kind of show otherwise is in the GM side of things. And DZ, this is where I'm going with this.
It probably is good. Cool Kev, I agree. I bet you he's got a bunch of dealerships, right?
He's got a bunch of restaurants, a bunch of dealerships, and a bunch of other stuff. But business is not talent acquisition.
No.
Business is understanding how to make money. And you can – that's funny. Yes, because let's be honest, Robin looks like a chick in tights. Okay, let's just call a duck a duck. And so what you saw from John Elway was he went after the flash. So for example, there was a crap right tackle that was available in, like, was it Menelik Watson, for example? And he was a mediocre right tackle, but he was the best right tackle available in that free agent. So John Elway, to shut up the fan base, we needed a right tackle badly, went and gave the dude like an absolute truckload of money. Undeservedly so. He deserved none of it. And then the team suffered as a result, because then you're hamstrung with this massive contract that you're basically anchored down with, right?
I know that too well. J.C. Jackson.
Right. And so look at your team and what you're referring to there, DZ, right? What you're referring to is, I want the whiz bang. So I want the wide receiver. I want the cornerback. I want the flash and the, ooh la la. But that doesn't actually get your team across the finish line. What you really want is a nose tackle. What you really want is an offensive center. What you really want is the right guard or left guard that your team desperately needs, and maybe a defensive end to like add some icing onto that cake. But guess what? A defensive end is not going to move the needle in the corporate media, who are pushing a narrative to say all you want is flash because this is nothing but an offensive league.
Sure.
But you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did to the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense on the Philadelphia Eagles made the Chiefs look pedestrian.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you need to look no further than what we just saw this past Super Bowl.
Yeah. That's a
great segue. There was a question I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about that. So has the Chargers addressed the nose tackle, the D tackle, and now one of your defensive ends are gone. So have they addressed anything on that D line?
Yeah. So that's the Deshaun Hand. He's a D end that will probably move on the inside, and then Naquan Jones is a nose tackle. These guys are they're kind of like your below tier. They're not flashy names. And what they're going to do is they're going to try to see how much juice they can get out of the squeeze. And in my opinion, the better coaches on the Charter staff are on the defensive side right now. They've got a really good D-line coach. Jesse Minter as the D coordinator. He's going to be the next boy wonder. I got him getting the head coaching job maybe in a year or two. Like, he's going to be a head coach somewhere. He's that good. Like, I swear by it. And they did the same. They brought in like two other cornerbacks that kind of weren't really like flashy, but just have traits and can play zone defense really well. And that's what Jesse Minter. The Chargers ran zone at like one of the highest clips out of anybody last season. So he brought some guys back that will do well in zone. But like the one guy, Benjamin St. Juste, his stats in Washington were horrible, like just absolutely horrible. But they know of him. He was a Michigan guy, so Harbaugh and Minter, they know this guy. He played at Michigan. They know how to use him then. Yeah, so they brought him over. He's a big, tall guy. Kind of funny, Jack. I was listening to a show. I watched Coach JB's show, and he had Lonnie Johnson on, the guy that just signed with the Raiders, cornerback. And that guy, he's bounced around a lot. He's a JUCO guy, but he's bounced around. I think he's going into his 6th or 7th year. But he actually had offers from the Chargers and Niners and chose to go to the Raiders for less money, supposedly.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know he chose, to take less. Because Lonnie Johnson, I kind of see him more of like a special teamer. Right now it's like they got him, ranked like at third string. Actually, no, they got him at 2nd string, but I don't know if he's even to make that. I have a feeling that Trey Taylor is going to step up this year, winning the Jim Thorpe Award, practice squad last year. But I just don't know how much playing time he's going to get.
Yeah, we'll see.
He does fit the mold of a Pete Carroll, though. And I think that's part of the reason why he came over. But I also saw him bringing him over for special teams, because that's pretty much what his career has been, special teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that he said that he took less money. So maybe it seems like his opportunity in Vegas is going to be more than he would have with the Niners or Chargers. But I mean, the Chargers are still are in need of that third cornerback because their rookies last season played out of their minds. Cam Hart and Tarheeb still, but they brought in a Pittsburgh guy last season, Dante Jackson, who plays really well in zone, and then that Benjamin St-Juste, the actual Canadian guy, by the way, Richie. His school or his town, I could not pronounce it. I was like, as this foreign French stuff. I don't know. I don't mess with the French stuff. Not trying to.
Next time you look at Lonnie Johnson, look at his picture. He's got a big old tattoo cross on his neck, but he's 6'2", like 213.
Seems like a really good guy, man. I thought he was 6'4".
Fits the mold of a Pete Carroll guy for sure. He likes those safeties tall.
Yeah, so so I'm thinking, Jack, I'm thinking the Lonnie Johnson signing was around the time the Chargers acquired Benjamin St-Juste because they're the same thing. Was it Trey Taylor softer than Richie's cat?
Here's the funny thing is, I don't even allow cats in my house because I think they're too soft in general.
My girl wants a cat, and I'm like, nope. I grew up with cats. I don't want them. I don't have a problem with them, but I like outside cats that go kill mice and rats and all that stuff. Just not in my house. No offense to cat lovers out there. Yeah. I don't know. I thought that was kind of neat hearing Lonnie Johnson. I mean, the guy's had a decent career, but I think he only signed like a 1 year.
It's a 1 year deal.
He's definitely a Pete Carroll type, man. Like Pete loves those long, lanky cornerbacks, that going back to the Legion of Boom days. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what the Raiders do because right now they need a lot of guys on that defensive side, the secondary, and we'll see. But you're not going to like this, Jack, but one of the big betting odds is still the guy I told you that I think you guys are going to get at pick 6.
Genty?
Yeah, you guys have like the best betting
I mean,
odds,
it's leaning that direction, but it's going to be really interesting. So after the Russell Wilson signing in New York, now does New York? I think it's a 1 year deal. Where again, that's the whole thing. We don't know what's going on with the Raiders, with our quarterback, with Geno. He still hasn't signed an extension yet. So
they're going to hammer that. They'll hammer it out, Jack.
They'll figure it out. But it's like, what's the length going to be? So that will really determine if they say it's like a 4 year deal. That I could say nope. We're not really doing a quarterback. If it's a 3 year deal where it's really a 2 year deal, you can kick off the third. Then that's open play. So it could, Sidor could even, drop down to us. So, but I think it really is going to depend on what Geno does. Because that will tell the whole story once that deal's done, what the Raiders are doing. I hope they get it done sooner than later. Because again, when you got like Russell Wilson then signing, then we talked about Aaron Rodgers earlier. And then we talk about Brock Purdy, again, there's always a step up in contracts. So, if Brock Purdy gets a huge contract, Geno's going to be on. If Purdy's getting this, I want more than that. So,
hey, Anthony, Asante Samuel is opposite of everything Pete Carroll wants as a cornerback. I do not see him going to Vegas. If Tom Telesco is there, maybe. Not anymore. I think Asante probably goes to Buffalo or something like that. I'm not sure. But I don't see him in Vegas. You guys have a real head coach and GM over there now who's not going to go for guys who can't tackle. Because that was Asante's problem. He couldn't tackle anybody. It was physics. The guy's he's tiny, and he just gets ran over. Like, teams would literally run to his side because they could. And he couldn't stop anybody. He was a ball hawk, and he played with heart, but that was about it.
I think, what do you, let me ask you this, because, Raider Nation has, brought this stuff up about Asante. If he came over to Las Vegas, I can't see him playing on the outside at all. I see him going directly to the slot.
I don't know if you want him on the slot. You would have to have him on the outside because, man, you do not. I mean, look, the kid, he's got a great mentality. He's got a great heart. He plays bigger than what he is. But it's just physics. It just comes down to physics. You can have a tight end box him out. Like, I don't know about that, man.
The answer is no, Jack.
That's about the only place that I can see him actually playing.
He needs to play outside, and DZ is 100% correct. The problem in today's NFL is that the inside and the slot is typically run by tight ends.
If he can't tackle, I mean, I can totally see it, because if he can't tackle, then you're not going to be playing the slot. But that's why I can't see him actually coming to the Raiders.
Man. So he's good. What he really excelled in was on the outside, jumping coverages, stuff like that. You know, he had that game where he had like 3 interceptions or something. You know, he definitely has the genes. You know, his father was an amazing cornerback. And there's a lot of drama going on with his father and Dion and all that stuff right now.
And I agree with Cool Kev, what he just said right there.
Samuel's another Amik.
He's Amik Robertson.
Amik Robertson? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Robinson or Robertson?
Robertson.
Yeah. He'll go somewhere, but I don't think that's your guys' flavor.
I don't think it's our guy.
Yeah. Pete's got to build his defense a certain way, man. And what he knows, they're big dudes that can ball.
Samuel is not physical enough for Pete Carroll.
No.
What you have with Samuel there is a guy who has great instincts in terms of reading coverages and the football IQ stuff, but who has not developed his physical ability or willingness, take your pick in terms of what word you want to use, to tackle. And so he's really only good in the pass coverage side of things. And in order to then make him useful for your team, you would have to play over the top safeties on his side of the ball. And that would start to get kind of predictable, right? Where the team could almost bank on the fact that Samuel's side of the ball has 2 dudes that are kind of like leaning in that direction. And then they could then throw to the other side or run to the other side, knowing that it's weaker on the other side of the ball.
That's what they did. When he was an outside corner, we saw teams. It was almost like they were checking to his side. They're like, "Oh, he's here. Okay, we're running to this side now, and we're going to get 5-6 yards a clip because this guy is not going to be able to stop us." It was, I don't know. He was a fan favorite. A lot of fans loved him because he played with a chip on his shoulder. He had that dog mentality that you want, but it's just physics. It comes down to, and like the guys they have on this team now that they just drafted last year, these dudes tackle, man. Tariq Still and Cam Hart, Notre Dame guy, he had some of the hardest hits I saw last season as a cornerback. Dude, I was mad when you guys got him, but the 4th round, I was not happy about that. I mean, 5th round, and he fell due to his shoulder stuff. And kind of something that sucks is that he got 2 concussions last year, which is not good. That's why I think they brought in 2 guys. They'll probably draft more guys just because you don't want your guys suffering multiple concussions. That's like, he suffers 2 more. You got to hang the cleats up or something, especially in short amount of time. So
I got to ask you a question. So again, this is going back to one of my Notre Dame boys, because you guys had Thomas Harper. He was a safety. Now he's on the Raiders. So
who had Thomas Harper?
You guys. So he must not have done anything.
I don't remember Thomas Harper. I know the name. Why am I? Did you guys sign him this offseason?
Yeah, Raiders signed him.
And you're saying he came over from the Chargers?
Said player history, 424, Los Angeles Chargers free agent, 824 way by the Chargers.
Oh, okay, that's why. Yeah, He just, yeah. He was just a body. Okay. Sorry. Yeah,
That's okay. It's been a while since I've seen him play, so.
Opportunities, man. That's all it takes. Like we discussed earlier, it's just, you never know with these players.
But it is, interesting. The Pete Carroll, mold is being built. So the very first signing that the Raiders did was a restricted free agent in Polamalu, which is Troy's nephew, and he's 6'4". And then after they lost Morrig, then they signed Jimmy Chin, who's 6'3".
Jeremy
So
Chin.
it's kind of interesting. They're both like strong safety type players, more in the box. Where Morrig last year was more of he was the free agent or free safety.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling right now, just with the players on hand, I think Polamalu is going to be more of the free safety. And of course, Jimmy's going to be more in the box. So it's yet to be seen, yet to be determined. Because Patrick Graham will like switch them up, between strong and free. But you're probably going to have more of the Polamalu now, so which is a little bit different role than he had last year. So
I'm sorry, I was listening. I just read Gord Peterson's comment. Jesus Christ. What the fuck?
Oh my God. Hey, Gord. Good thing, I'm not an awful. I would put that tariff on that, Lester Hayes hat. Just kidding, brother.
Oh, that's funny. That's
I'm really intrigued to see how the Chiefs kind of keep stacking, but more so with what the Raiders do, especially with Pete in there. I'm really Pete wants to get a good running back in there, and that's why at that pick 6, that's going to be a tough pill for them to do they go get Genty or do they add to that already strong D line, get another guy on there?
Well, it's going to be very fascinating because, they don't really have a bunch of needs. So kind of like what's happened, in this past week, again, I've been gone last weekend. I went to Reno on a guy's trip. They didn't have the over-unders yet for the NFL. They had the odds for the Super Bowl. And the Raiders were like 90-1. I was like, damn, that's brutal. But in the way of what they've kind of done, they brought back Sam Webb. He's been on their practice squad for the last 3 years. He's a 6-foot cornerback. I was kind of happy to see him. I think he played pretty well when he gets the opportunity. There's just more guys that are in from him. But these damn Patriots are killing me.
Oh,
they
you brought up something. Keep going with that.
Yeah, they took, of course, one of my favorite players on the entire Raider team. He wore the green dot, had a C on his chest in Robert Spillane. And then the Raiders come back.
Who's doing that, Jack? Who's taking the players, though?
Oh, it's Patriots.
No. Who on the Patriots? It's Vrabel, Mike Vrabel.
Well, of course, and he's a linebacker. And they signed another linebacker, and then they put in a offer for Christian Ellis. So his restricted free agent cap number was like 3.2, and the Raiders offered him like 4.8, and they already signed 2 linebackers. So they got starting linebackers already, and then they come back and they like, oh, we'll give you, we'll match it, and we'll give you a 2-year deal for like $13 million. So they got like 3 linebackers that have getting paid starting money. I mean, that one, it's like, Patriots, stop taking my players. Stop going after them.
That's kind of funny you brought up the Patriots because something about Vrabel's 2021 team has the Chargers, Joe Ortiz, really intrigued because we had 6 of those guys on the team. We lost 1 to the Chiefs, Elijah Molden. So we have 5 2021 Vrabel Titans on the defense right now. They liked whatever that guy was producing in Tennessee at the time. So you're going to see him in New England. That's what he's working on. And then they did the whole Diggs thing. I'm not a Diggs fan, but he's still a baller, and that's going to be good for Drake May over there. But yeah, I can feel your pain with guys bouncing to go play with Vrabel. But I
just couldn't believe, after signing 2 starting linebackers, we're going after. I don't understand why they just gave him the money up front in the beginning. unless they're really just trying to lowball the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, we got 2 starting linebackers. You're a restricted free agent. Go check it out, and we'll come back. But if they liked him that much, why not just sign him in the first place? So that was one. I heard also possibly another guy I kind of wanted for the Pats. And I don't know if it's official yet, but I heard a rumor today that Keenan Allen. I was kind of hoping for him in free agency. He may not be a pure number 1 X wide receiver.
He's not.
But he's still that 1D below the tier. You know what I mean? He can do everything. He can be a great Z nowadays, but for what you're going to get out there on the free agent market that's left, he was the best guy out there. So I don't know if it's an official deal or not for Keenan or not.
So the thing about Keenan, so when Mike Williams signed with the Chargers, him and Keenan are like best friends, I guess. They see each other every other day. And they asked, like, hey, are we going to see a Keenan Allen reunion? And Mike was kind of like, kind of did his like, I don't know. We'll have to see. And I think the fan base is kind of split about it. And they love Keenan. They'd want him to retire. But me personally, as a fan who just wants to win, I want fresh blood. I need new guys. I need them to bring in some new guys because this wide receiver room outside of Ladd McConkey is pretty subpar. There's 8 wide receivers, and all of them are, they're just subpar dudes except for Mike Williams. But look, Mike's is just a jump ball dude, right?
Yeah, and it's like Keenan, playing you guys. It's like Keenan was like the one receiver that would put some fear because like he's just that talented. He may not have that elite speed anymore, but
I would be
gets the
pissed
ball.
if he went
He
to the
runs
Raiders,
great routes, got great hands. I liked it.
He is a Wait, is he from Northern? He went to Cal, and I remember there was a picture of him wearing his Raiders hat before he was drafted. But that's could have been a Northern California thing. But I remember like when he went to Chargers, fans were like, it just was like scarred into our memories. Like this dude had a fucking Raiders hat on.
Good for him.
And
Go Keenan on that.
Yeah, we'll see where he lands, but like I don't know. As it looks right now, I don't think he comes back unless they really want to do the whole like, all right, we'll sign you for 1 year, you retire as a Charger. But the way this regime is working, they want to win, man. And I think what they've showed with some of these signings is they want dudes who can play 17 games. And we'll see. We'll see.
So I'm going to add some insight in addition, just to kind of some Broncos news here, just to kind of add like the other divisional team here. The only new news that I really have is that the Broncos have officially re-signed Michael Burton, fullback, to our roster. I have mixed feelings on that. I think he's a great special teams player. I think he does a good job for the team. I think he has a role within.
Richie, did you guys use a fullback last season?
We did.
Okay.
We did. Like, and it wasn't. Sean Payton is one of those kind of like odd modern coaches that actually requires one in his offense for certain plays. Like he's kind of maintained this like hybrid kind of blend between modern and kind of old school, which I think is part of the reason why his offense works so well even in modern NFL. But I'm a bit disappointed because I wanted to see my guy Nate Atkins kind of fill that role. I wanted to see Sean Payton. I wanted to see him leverage a hybrid tight end who can do both. I want to see Nate Atkins show his worth as a, special team / tight end / fullback / utility / he's.
It sounds like you're talking about Brock Bowers.
Well, Brock Bowers is good, but he's not going to be a special teams guy.
No, he's not going to be special teams, but I'm talking about fullback.
He's not going to be a fullback.
Slot, tight end.
He won't be any of those other positions. He'll play tight end as a pass catcher as well as maybe inline blocking, and that's it, especially going forward. your team will not risk him getting hurt, given the fact that he is so
No.
valuable to your team.
Yeah.
So
God, no.
you can forget any of those other slashes that you wanted to add on to Brock Bowers. He's an offensive weapon. He's a fantastic player. And no, I'm not devaluing him at all, actually. If anything, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm saying that teams with their most valuable player or one of their most valuable players do not allow them to get on the field unless they can maximize at the core spots. As an example, there's a reason why Crosby sits his rear end on the bench when you play special teams. And that's because he is too valuable to not have on the defensive side of the ball, because he kills opposing quarterbacks at a very, very high success rate, right? So let's just, put that aside and keep your best players in their core value to your team and maximize the potential for your team. But yeah, we re-signed Michael Burton. I was on the fence. I like the idea of it because I think Burton is a good player. I think he does a lot of good stuff. He kind of does.
Is he a hybrid tight end running back, or has he always been a fullback?
He's a fullback / running back sometimes.
Okay.
And I like Atkins. I'd like to see Atkins get a shot to win that role and win that job. Sean Payton and Burton go back a long ways. So I think part of this is Sean Payton wanting to give his guy an opportunity. Sean Payton is an old school football guy at heart, but he recognizes that the NFL has changed. So he has a certain place in his heart for the fullbacks in the NFL.
Jim didn't recognize it. They saw a D tackle and they're like, "Hey, you're going to be our new fullback, dude."
Right, but Jim is a little bit more modern, and that's what I was hoping that Peyton might move towards in this year for the Denver Broncos, which is move to Nate Atkins, who has played fullback in college from the tight end position and shown that he can do it at a pretty high level, and also done so when he's needed to for my Denver Broncos when he's the only option. And he's done well there as well. So I was just kind of hoping that they would have leveraged the inexpensive option in Nate Atkins and shifted that extra money over to other positions as opposed to tying it up in a fullback. That was just kind of my only thing. Or a pure fullback. Now, he plays special teams and he has all the stuff, and there's no taking away from that. But so does Nate Atkins, right? And so my point being is I would have liked to have maybe freed up the proper fullback spot with a tight end who can also play the tight end position and catch the ball, who's just a little bit more versatile. We were talking about your signing there, DZ, earlier in the show at the tight end spot. I just find that Nate Atkins is, kind of one of those Swiss Army knife style guys that every team requires. And I believe that you require guys like that on your team. And I fear that there's a nepotism over long-term quality or versatility when it comes to Burton. Not to knock him, because I think he does a great job. I really do. But I just think that, he doesn't have the size and speed that Atkins does, which is an additional value, in my opinion, to the team.
There's this guy that they have on the team. He was there last year, Tucker Fisk. He's just this large human. I think I saw him catch like 5 passes last season, but he's like this hybrid tight end fullback guy. And then they also have Scott Matlock, who is a D tackle / fullback. And it's just this like caveman Stone Age mentality they have going on over there in LA right now with these guys, because the previous regimes, the fullbacks they had were pure fullbacks, and they had a guy who's a free agent right now, and I'm actually kind of like social friends with him, is Xander Horvath, who had like an extremely high RAS testing and did really good with under God, I'm trying to remember our last offensive coordinator. What the heck's that guy's name?
Turner?
No, he was right before. It's like 2 years ago. heck is this guy's name? Anyways, he's a free agent, and then he actually played for the Saints last year, but that wasn't with Peyton. But he was a pure fullback. This kid could catch, but he was
Golden.
Huh?
Golden? Alex Golden?
No. The guy I'm talking about. His name is Xander Horvath. Not Kellen. It was right before Kellen Moore. No, it would have been. Maybe it was Kellen. Anyways, but it kind of sucks, is because you're kind of talking about these fullbacks. It's like if they don't play in multiple positions, unless
Lombardi?
your name. Yeah, I think it would have been Lombardi.
So there was Joe Lombardi, Kellen Moore, and then you had Greg Roman.
It was Joe Lombardi.
And then there was also Shane Steichen.
Yes, Shane Steichen. That I mean, he's the head coach for the Colts right now.
Yeah.
But it kind of sucks, like these fullbacks. I think about them because it's like if you can't be something else, unless like you're however you say his name, Juszczyk.
Yes.
Like you're kind of SOL, man, because a lot of these teams, they go away from them. And there's like how many teams really use a fullback? There's probably 10 teams, maybe. That's
I was gonna
one.
say, but a dozen, I think, in the NFL that truly use them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just one job, right? So we have two guys currently on the team, but they play multiple positions, if that makes sense. So it's like, I feel bad for these fullbacks, especially the Xander Horvath guy, who is just a stud, but all he played was fullback. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And what's his measurements? Is he like 6'1", 240 kind of thing, or is he
the Xander guy? Yeah, that's about right. 6'1", 240.
Yeah.
He's like, just Google him or something. I mean, his RAS score was like a 9.9 something. It was just insane. I think he was out of Purdue. I can't if I remember. But I mean, what the Chargers did, they came in and they got Scott Matlock, a Boise State D lineman. They said, "Hey, dude, do you think you could be able to hold the ball?" And so they converted him to fullback, which was kind of fun.
So Horvath is signed with the BC Lions in the Canadian Football League.
That must have just happened.
Yep.
That just happened. Good for him.
Yeah. So he's up in BC. BC's a beautiful place.
Hell yeah, I'm happy for him.
January 24th, 2025. So that was kind of earlier this year. He signed with the BC Lions.
Wait,
but he signed as a running back though.
Well, yeah, he could. Dude, this kid can catch, man. Justin Herbert was throwing like bombs to this guy. Lombardi used him for like a few games, and he was catching touchdowns and running with the ball, and then they went away from him and just didn't even use him for the rest of the season. It was really weird. There's fans right now who are like, "Where's Xander Horvath? Bring him back." But that's not happening, especially under this new regime and the fullbacks we currently have. That's crazy. Good for him. I'm gonna have to message him.
Yeah, so he's with the BC Lions right now, January 2024, January 24th, 2025. BC Lions. They've been a competitive team with one of them at least, although not quite as competitive as like the Argonauts or some of the other teams in the CFL.
Good for him.
But he was with the Dolphins last year briefly. It sounds like he got cut on the 27th, signed on the 19th, cut on the 27th. It's just a tough road for.
Oh yeah, man, it sucks.
Guys
I feel bad for these guys, but he's definitely an athlete, and it's just that position. It's a dying position, and that's why I'm kind of hoping for this running back resurgence that we might be seeing. I'm kind of hoping that these guys can get back into the game. I like the fullback position. It was a fun position.
I agree. So, I mean, with my Denver Broncos, I just to kind of tie back and do some extra stuff on them. I think we're missing that veteran running back. Dobbins may be the answer in terms of providing that veteran presence. That'll be interesting. I do truly believe that the Denver Broncos offensive line is in need of some additional beef in order to get bigger and faster and stronger, in order to be what I would like my team to be, which is more of a run-first team as opposed to a pass-first team. And I think that actually helps Bo Nix rather than hurt him. He was forced to pass the ball so much last year because of the run game failing on him, and I would like to see that run game be elevated. And then
you talk about your running game, Richie. Don't be surprised. Hampton, North Carolina running back.
Hampton's been floated out there. I don't like it. I think he's a first-round pick or a top of the second-round pick, which is fine.
He's been linked to both of our teams up top.
I am totally cool if he's our second-round pick. In fact, I'm even totally cool if we trade up to get him in the second round, right? Totally okay with that. I don't like the value of the running back position in the first round, especially in a deep running back class like we have here. In addition to that, my Denver Broncos have a vast majority of our interior defensive linemen that are not on contract in 2026.
So you want to get some fresh meat in there.
I want fresh meat in there, and I want like a legit dude. I want Grant.
There's some dudes.
Grant. No, I want Grant. And so I've been a huge proponent of Grant for my Denver Broncos. I think he's an absolute stud in the interior defense.
Grant or Graham?
Grant.
Graham's not falling out of the top 10.
No, if he's there at number 6, I'm running
Grant,
to the podium.
Grant.
Yeah, Kenneth.
The other defensive tackle from Michigan, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah,
and
the big boy.
And actually, here's a fun fact. Here's a fun fact, Jack. Graham was double teamed less than Grant was in college.
It's interesting. He's a nose tackle versus a deep tackle.
But process that. So who am I double teaming in college? I'm going to double team the guy that I actually think is better because it's such a pass happy league, right? So if I think Grant is maybe more technically sound, but Graham might have some intangibles, but Grant was double teamed more in college than Graham was. And I realize that their last names are so similar, and I'm intentionally, over pronunciating them just because they're so close. But Grant, which is the guy that I want, was double teamed far more than Graham on the same team. And I actually think that the interior defensive line is such an important and critical position in today's NFL that I want Grant on my team because he is value. Like legitimate value for my team.
He's a stud, man. He was my favorite pick for the Chargers at 22. And then I've kind of pivoted off him a little bit. Like I still would absolutely love if they landed him. Another guy that's been linked to both of our teams is that tight end, Colson Loveland from his same team. Mm-hmm. That's another potential Bronco pick or Chargers pick. So I got a feeling every team in the AFC West is going to get guys that's going to piss everybody off because damn it, I did not want this guy going here. I did not want this guy going there. And it's going to happen because especially with these coaching staffs, they're going to get some dudes. And what Richie was saying is this running back class is stacked. There's dudes I'm seeing that could possibly fall to the 4th round. That there's guys that are
in other drafts they would be a first-round running back, right?
Right. There's
second round. Yeah. But Jack, Jack and DZ actually, I think this is an important piece. Andy Reid's a different can of worms. I think that he's a little less old school and a little bit more of the modern era style of today's NFL. Although you can't fault him. I mean, it's worked. It is what it is.
Crazy plays.
Yeah, it's becoming a thorn in my side. Right. I'm getting really sick and tired of it.
But let's be real here. Is you have a hardcore defensive guy in Pete Carroll and Spags. So Pete Carroll and Spags are kind of cut from a very similar cloth where they want that absolutely aggressive, hard-hitting defense. And so that's now the Raiders and our other divisional opponent in the Chiefs. And then you have Harbaugh, who's a very hard-nosed style football. Like he likes to run the ball, be gritty and all that kind of stuff. And He tried to do some of that last year, and I suspect that you're going to see a kind of another elevation of that process in the Chargers. I think you're seeing an elevation of that in this offseason, both through the draft, and you've seen some of it, not all of it, but some of it in your offseason moves. They're not sexy, but step back and think about it, and you start.
It got my attention. I'll tell you, that Becton signing.
Yeah,
and
then you have Sean Payton, who's cut from an old school cloth as well, who wants that like high-powered offense, but he's still got that old school mentality of, a fullback is a valued position for me, and I want defensive and offensive line, and so on and so forth. So we have a bunch of old school coaches who have had enormous success, which is undeniable.
Make the AFC West great again.
And yeah, I agree, 100%. And so looking ahead, I think you're absolutely correct, Ezed, which is not only are you going to see us vying for similar players in the draft, but I think a lot of the guys that we can envision each other, or like I would envision Grant coming to my team. I can envision Hampton or Loveland coming to my team. I would not be shocked if either one of those guys ended up on either of your teams and not mine, and not be surprised about that at all. Right?
Somebody in this draft is going to slide too, which is, and that's what's kind of like going to go against probably Richie's philosophy of who he wants his Broncos to get. Is there might be a possibility that one of these elite wide receivers slide down and might be a little bit too tempting for either of our teams to pass up on, which I would be okay with, but I don't think Richie would be. I don't think Richie would want one of these wide receivers.
I'd be livid.
Well, Richie could look at there's that nose tackle from Kentucky. I think he's
Dion Walker.
6'3". Yeah, he's like 6'3", 6'4", 353 pounds, nose tackle.
He has a problem getting in a 3-point stance, though, Jack. But he's massive, and he would be a good get in probably the later second to early third round. Yeah, he's a beast. He's a massive
so Jack, what I want from an interior lineman is the ability to absorb double teams, but also win the double teams to get into the backfield and be a run stopper and another weapon in the getting to the quarterback game. And my concern
that would be Kenneth Grant.
Yes, and
that's
so
Kenneth Grant.
So hence my enamoration with Kenneth Grant and why I like who he is and what he represents, which is he was double teamed a tremendous amount in college. He won a tremendous amount of those double teams in college and got to the backfield. Now, he didn't get the sacks, but guess what? He got the pressures. He got the moving off the ball. He got the other
it's the dirty work. It's the dirty work that goes unappreciated.
And you let
you let your guys clean up. And that's I'm like my nightmare.
That's what separates me from the average guy kind of assessing it is
sure.
I want the dirty work guy because I know that there is he's as important or more important than the dude that actually gets the sack.
My nightmare scenario is Jack's Raiders getting Mason Graham and Richie's getting Kenneth Grant. I'm going to be.
We need that beef against your Chargers now. We need the beef. And what I love about Mason Graham, I'm running to the podium if I'm the Raiders. I mean, his comp is Christian Wilkerson, which, the Raiders signed that huge contract
to. We don't need two of those guys on the
That's what I'm saying. We need two of them.
Oh, my God. That's scary times, man.
But the other thing that Carroll is known for, though, is he likes the tall, lanky backfield guys as well. So
there's the cornerback, Michigan's cornerback guy.
Yeah, and there's another dude. Well, there's another dude that I have to look up again because I forgot his name already that I mentioned on our Combine show, where he had some great stats in college, but he really blew me away in the Combine. He's a 6'2", 6'3", kind of 215 to 220 pound guy, but he ran like 4.3 at the combine, or 4.4 at the combine, which is like, he to me is a Pete Carroll guy, like through and through, because Richard Sherman was a little slower than him, but he was a similar size, and so that guy there is a sneaky pick, in my opinion, Jack, for you guys in the first round, because you want a speed guy to keep up with the opponents' tight ends and running backs and other wide receivers. But then Pete Carroll likes the ability to just leave one guy on an island, because he likes to play quarters. He likes to leave each of those guys kind of in their own little zones.
I'm so freaking intrigued, Richie, I don't know why I'm so intrigued what the Raiders are going to do. I'm just like,
because they got an early pick. So there's so many different options.
You have a real head, like, I hate saying this because I don't like discrediting your guys' last coaches, but this is freaking Carroll, man. Like, and then you've got this young, hungry GM and Spycheck, and it's gonna be pretty interesting because you guys have some.
And DZ, you're missing the biggest piece here, which is Geno Smith is not an elite quarterback, but he's not a slouch either. He's in
middle of the pack.
He's in the upper middle tier of the NFL. So now the question is, okay, well, here's where it really gets interesting, which is build everything else. Now, that has been what I have said for my Denver Broncos to potentially do for the last 4 or 5 years now, right? Yeah. Which is just build everything else. Get offensive line, get defensive line, get cornerbacks, build weapons. Now, they already got Brock Bowers, so they've already built some, one of the best tight ends now coming out in the league for sure. That's not even an argument at this point. But now it's build the offensive line, build the defensive line, build your cornerbacks, and build out the rest of the roster. And you have the cap space to do it with the Raiders, because they don't have a ton of big payouts other than Max Crosby really on their team to speak of. And let's also be honest, Crosby is a unique animal, because he's one of the rare air dudes that said, give me the money, but you're not going to see a drop in production. And he's actually held true to his word. Yeah. Max Crosby is the rare air guy that says, give me the money and I will maintain production, I promise, and does it.
I hate that I like Max Crosby. I know. We really do like him.
Well, it's like Khalil Mack. I love Khalil Mack, I root for him every time, unless they're playing the Raiders. But Richie, you made a good point. So, like today, the Raiders had a couple signings. They signed a nose tackle, Lecky Fionto. He was a 4th-round draft pick out of the Cardinals. He played with the Jets last year. He's like 6'5", 335, pounds as a nose tackle. And then they also re-signed, restricted free agent, exclusive free agent Matthew Butler, who was their 5th-round draft pick. So they got 2 defensive tackles today. So I would not be surprised at all for a Raiders trade back to go back, maybe even like far back as like number 12, like Dallas. Dallas would love Genty. I can see Dallas being all over him. That's a total pick, for the Cowboys. It's written all over it. And then you get a guy like Metu, which that guy for a left tackle, he is an athletic freak. I forgot what he ran. It was something. It was like a 4.5 or something as a left tackle.
You brought up a really interesting scenario, Jack. Trading back with the Cowboys for a Genty would be pretty on par for the Cowboys.
And it holds true for what Rich said. Build everything else, right? So you get that left tackle, you put him at right tackle. You take DJ Glaze, who was a 3rd-round pick last year, which they played a right tackle. You move him over to left guard. And, boy, then you're going to have a bunch of big boys up front. And then you get like another second plus whatever you're going to get at it. And then you can address some of the other positions in the 2nd round.
Yeah, the 2nd and 3rd round is the meat, I feel like, in this draft. Like, there's a lot of dudes in this draft in those rounds.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have very many surprises in the 1st round of this year's draft. I think there's just a lot of people. It's going to be a lot of like, well, of course that guy was taken in the 1st round. I don't think you're going to have a lot of shockers, although I could be wrong. But I do think, just my general thought process here is I do think that you're going to see the second and third round be where the movement occurs. I think you're going to see some trade ups in the second. I think you're going to see some trade ups in the third to try to secure certain players that fit certain roles and needs, because I just think that that's kind of where I do think that that's kind of where stuff is going to come from, and that's where things are going to end up getting interesting.
There's a guy I really like, the kid out of Marshall, Green, I believe his name is Mike Green. He's a edge rusher. He is like a clone of Khalil Mack when Khalil Mack came out into the league. And he actually, Khalil Mack was a little faster than him in the shuttle drill, but this guy, like 5 more reps on the bench. If that tells you anything. But there's this kind of this weird theme that I'm seeing with a lot of these players, because I've been paying attention to the edge rushing guys. There's a lot of these, like, kind of sucks for these kids, but there's controversies with these guys. Like they're bringing up a lot of their past, and like another guy I like is Pierce, the Tennessee guy, the edge guy. But people say he's got a lot of character issues, and does he really love football? And that Mike Green guy, apparently there's some potential SA stuff that.
Well, when they say character issues, you know, I don't know. I got to look at some of the stuff. I look at one of the biggest picks when Jalen Carter fell to the Raiders. And his character issue, he was racing, you know, whatever, his car on campus. Okay. But they just went through the whole Henry Ruggs thing, right? You know, where he got drunk, killed somebody, you know, going 159 miles an hour in his Lambo. So the nation, like the ownership's looking at us, oh, you're speeding. You're driving fast. Didn't we all do that when we were young? So, I mean, you gotta take what type of character issue it is and what they're talking about. I mean, if it's like abusive to another person, that's something different. But when it was something small like that, and the Raiders took a step back, they took a huge step back and not getting Carter and taking Tyree Wilson. I mean, what a game changer. Can you imagine if Carter was on that defensive line? Oh, then I wouldn't even be talking about Mason Graham at all. I wouldn't even be thinking about him.
Yeah. Hang on.
Did they say what his character issues were?
Which one? Pierce? So
no, I don't know. Even both of them, because you know you're looking at defensive ends.
There's yeah. We need some juice on that edge team, because Max in his last year, and let's be honest, Max in his twilight years. You know, what a great career he's had, but they signed him to a 1-year, $18 million deal. If that doesn't tell you that he's hanging up the cleats after, I don't know what does. But so I've been looking at a guy to pair with Tuli Pelotu, who was in his second year last season, who really didn't have as good of a year he did his rookie year, which is kind of slightly concerning, especially you thought he would have, you know, his ascension, but maybe that's just not the way it's working out. So I've been looking at a lot of these edge guys as possible picks at 22, and James Pierce, the guy from Tennessee. I'm actually part of a group chat with Chargers, and one of the guys, his brother or his friend's brother plays on that D line with him, and did not have any good things to say about him. Apparently, he is not a good guy to his teammates. Yada yada yada.
Yeah, that's if you're not a good guy to your teammates, then there's definitely character issues in the way of gelling.
Right, but who's to say that's true? But look, I'm taking this guy's word for it, right? And then that Mike Green guy, who is, like I said, is a clone of Khalil Mack. He's got, I guess, a checkered past with some touchy stuff, you know, the whole essay stuff, you know, which I'm sure teams are going to be really weary of. So we'll see. But those guys are kind of like in that 22 range that the Chargers can pick at. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I would say that in the past, I would agree. However, I believe that there has been a shift from a social perspective, not necessarily to accept the thing itself, because that's not acceptable in any pleasant company whatsoever.
You say maybe to forgive?
No, not even that. Which is, there is a propensity in today's world, unfortunately, to accuse folks of doing certain things. With the hope of getting your 15 minutes of fame and other things like that. And a lot of times accusations turn out to be false on that premise.
And especially at the time that guy's was around that time when it was really,
Correct. And the problem here is, I mean, my biggest issue with that as a general issue is it absolutely impacts those people where that sort of thing has actually occurred to them, because it makes it more difficult for real victims to step forward, which really bothers me in a big way. However, I also think that as on the flip side of all of this, we have seen a tremendous amount of accusations of some very, very prominent people in today's world, where those accusations have turned out through the public eye of not only being, they're total crap.
Like completely false.
Crap.
I just think it sucks that it comes out for these guys' biggest, opportunity of their lifetimes. Dirt just starts coming up, and it's kind of unfortunate. Now, if it's warranted and if it's justified, I feel like they wouldn't have been playing in college, but maybe not. So
well, it depends on how good they are, unfortunately, and there is does the dollar value outweigh the negative press,
especially in this NIL
and all that sort of stuff. So I do think that there is an A and B element there as well. But at the end of the day, the question is, were those accusations actually found to be true? Yes or no? Were they questionable? Yes or no? So on and so forth. And I think that in any instance there in today's world, I think there would have to be a police report. I think there would have to be evidence collected. I think there'd have to be charges filed. I think there'd have to be a lawsuit, etc., all that kind of stuff. And I doubt that someone like him would be in the position that he's at if any of those things actually took place, just my opinion. And so then the question is this a, you often hear the regret timelines and the regret stuff, which is like, hey, I did something that I shouldn't have one night when I was at a party or something like that, and now I'm going to claim something took place when it didn't.
Right.
There's just the problem is that there are so many things that are coming out in today's world that there's the really bad stuff, which should be absolutely just, not defended in any way, shape, or form. But then there's the other stuff, which is, folks that are just making comments on the other end of the spectrum just for either their 15 minutes of fame or because they regret making a decision that they made willingly. And
or just being young.
Or just being young and making a bad choice, right? And
I'm glad my past is.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, the problem is there's just a whole host of varying opinions on these things and varying issues that are occurring now in today's world. And these very famous at the collegiate level guys are being treated very similarly to professional athletes.
Well, now they're getting paid.
No, but the challenge is these guys. Okay, let's just put this in perspective. The dude's 20. Mm-hmm. Rewind to when you were 20 and tell me that you didn't do some absolutely stupid crap.
Absolutely.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, right. Yep. So my point is that every single person, if they're being perfectly honest, has done some really, really dumb stuff.
Well,
the difference is right now.
To this point, Richie, you were gone, and I made it a really good point how you can miss out on certain talent. I look at Jalen Carter, and this is when you were gone. Jalen Carter did that racing incident on campus, and the Raiders. He was there at the same pick at number 7. And you know what? They didn't take him because they had to experience what happened with Henry Ruggs and driving 159 miles an hour and killing a girl and her dog. Well, he's speeding. He's racing. Well, that's what he had. So they took Tyree Wilson. Now you look at where Tyree Wilson is versus just not alcohol, nothing, just being a young guy and driving fast. Hell, we've all done that at some point. So there's different levels of character issues. That's why I had to ask DZ that.
Jack, my only question on that one is, was it actually street racing, or was it just a young
it's
dude
speeding, just driving fast from what I got.
Oh,
but it was enough for the Raiders to be like, we can't have this publicity.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of disagree with that approach. I think that there needs to be a deeper analysis of things going on there. And then the other thing is that if the dude might have an issue off the field in terms of making stupid choices, the question then becomes well, is it not worth it potentially for your team to put like a babysitter on the guy to basically kind of work with him and to say, like as a mentor almost, right? Like, go find one of your ex-Raiders veterans and be like, okay, we want you to be a paid ambassador for $100,000 a year. We will give you medical benefits because we know you have a bad back now. You're going to go around and you're going to make sure this young dude who's going to be paid like, $6 million a year, who's going to be a staple for our franchise for the next decade. We want you to make sure you mentor him to make sure you get him back on the straight and narrow. And let's call that a day. How's that?
Yeah.
Why is that so bad? Why is that such a bad thing?
I can't disagree with that. I just think, it was so close to the timing and everything's so fresh. When somebody loses a life, from going 159 miles an hour, intoxicated, to your potential player that everyone in the nation wants. Like right now, it's Mason Graham is like the top guy that everybody wants. That are Raider fans. I'm not talking the media. Yeah. I'm just talking Raider fans.
You can't.
When you see that correlation, and it's just fresh.
I swear to God, Jack, if Abdul Carter falls to you guys.
No, but Jack, this is what my problem with this kind of mentality is, right? Which is,
that's not from the Raider fans. It's just from the ownership.
Right, but this is what my problem with that as a mentality is, which is, okay, no offense to your owner, but the dude has got really bad haircut advice for his entire NFL career being in the NFL ownership group. Now,
he made it famous on Dumb and Dumber.
Look. Just because your owner or the face of the franchise, he's not really the owner. It's his mom who's the owner, but he's the face of your franchise as playing the role of owner. Just because Davis has decided to model his haircut after Dumb and Dumber and try to then say, hey, I'm going to look and do this whole bowl cut thing. Like, I'm sorry, I question his personal life choices, right? Like, I just do. Like, that is not a smart decision. Like, he's got so much money at his disposal where he could have a stylist to make him look more presentable, but he chooses not to. Now, hear me out though. On the flip side, he's making known choices as a grown adult where it doesn't matter, and he's still making stupid choices. Now,
okay, I'm already
but rewind back to a dude who's 20.
No, I get it. That's why I'm saying that's not a big deal for him. But so again, Mark Davis doesn't do any of the picks. On that draft, it was Ziegler.
Yeah.
And McFired that made that choice.
Ziegler, I think, was in and around, or McFired was definitely around when they decided to go ahead and draft Aaron Hernandez, who had an absolute truckload of red flags in his checkered past. Like,
you guys watched that documentary, by the way?
Yes, it was brutal. And let's be real, the vast majority of the actual past actions were absolutely well known across the entire
1,000%. 1,000%.
That's a whole different level.
Yeah. That was like, okay, we know what we're getting ourselves into, but he's a good player, so let's get him.
The dude is an elite level football player. He's a gangbanger, but he's an elite level football player. But let's go ahead and draft him anyway, but just draft him a little later, right? But anyways,
there was some guy coming out, I think, in this draft that his comp is Aaron Hernandez, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Here's one that's kind of funny. So, Richie, this is for you and I. Just let's go back in time to one of a player that was great for both our teams, who absolutely had his screws loose, in Lyle Alzado.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder what his checkered past was, before he got drafted.
Well, Jack, see, this is the interesting thing. the teams probably never knew.
Or they didn't care.
Or both. Because the point is that there was no documentation of what actually took place on campus with guys like that. Because back then, social media did not exist.
Right.
Okay. Forums, cell phones, all of that was not a thing. It was not there. It did not exist. It did not come into play. It just didn't.
God, you didn't know who you were getting.
And
you could call some coaches. Yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah, and then the coaches would be like, the dude's awesome. The dude's awesome. And you could literally kind of corral a narrative, right? I mean, look at some of these old school dudes that were in the NFL. There were some guys that were well known in the NFL to come out of a practice, smash down a Mickey because they were in so much pain after all the work that they just did, knowingly from the team and the other players jump behind the wheel of a car after drinking like an actual Mickey of booze, like not figuratively, not just like, hey, we think we might have done it. Like a fair number of witnesses see the dude do the thing and be like,
I love hearing old school players.
Oh yeah.
Like talk about this stuff. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Like all you need to do is go back and watch some of these old school NFL.com and NFL documentaries. And you sit there and be like,
how did they do it? You know what I mean?
Well, no, I know exactly how they did it, but to Paul's point, they're literally pulling
no, I mean, how do you play the professional sport and do the crazy stuff you do?
No, but they're pulling a Sublime, 40 ounces to freedom, jumping behind the wheel of a car, somehow made it home without killing someone. So, there's that. And they were able to then continue being a professional, and in some cases make it to the Hall of Fame.
And even smoking as much as I do and still playing the sport.
Right. Yes.
Exactly.
And they used to smoke on the sidelines, right?
They did. They
did.
And so anyways, I think this is a super interesting way to end the show, is just say, my, how the tables have turned as the league has progressed here, where we're now talking about woulda, shoulda, couldas as being a red flag to not draft a guy in the first round when nothing is actually proven. Yeah. Right. And have that becoming a negative. But I think that the NFL has turned into an interesting league in terms of how public perception has shifted, and audience pandering is a real thing. I think it's an interesting piece. Also, they've taken a lot of the violence out of the game. So a lot of these guys that were, hopped up on booze and drugs and stuff like that when they were playing, couldn't play in the NFL now because of these stringent drug tests and other things like that they were going through. But we're going to end the show there just due to the timing and all that good stuff. And we're going to continue on next week. We're going to have a really interesting show next week, guys. For everyone who is still with us, thank you very much. Click the like button down below. Comment down below. Next week, we're going to have an interesting piece. Please pay attention to the Wild Wild West on X, the account there. There'll be some interesting updates over the course of the week in terms of the show and what we're going to talk about next week. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Wild Wild West podcast for this March 26th, 2025. And until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come.